For terror, joy, or pity, vast is the compass and the swell of notes. From the babe's first cry to voice of regal city, rolling a solemn sea-like brass that floats far as the woodlands with the trill to blend of that shy songstress, whose love-tale might tempt an angel to descend, while hovering o'er the moonlight veil. Ye wandering utterances, has earth no scheme, no scale of mortal music to unite powers that survive but in the faintest dream of memory? Oh, that ye might stoop to bear chains, such precious chains of sight as labored minstrelsies through ages wear. Oh, for a balance fit the truth to tell of the unsubstantial pondered well. What you just heard is from Wordsworth's On the Power of Sound, and as of late it's had me thinking about the relationship between everyday speech, sight, and sound. And one of the authors that I think most exemplifies this contestation in his writing is James Joyce. I've done some work on this channel before regarding Joyce's relationship to sound. I love alliteration, and Joyce is a master of alliteration and of onomatopoeia and totem words, and I always find it fascinating just to go into Joyce's work and find that on any page that I go to, I can find thematized sound and the relationship between thought and philosophy and sound, and the way that we use speech to enter our thoughts into the social realm. This brings with it a number of challenges of how do I say what I really mean? How does what I mean relate to the thoughts in terms of the way that they are externalized and experienced by others? And I think Joyce really accepts the ambiguities that are fraught with any speaking or, in fact, musical endeavor. And in this lecture, I would like to look at the way that music figures in Joyce's work, in Ulysses, Finnegans Wake, and a final little quote from Giacomo Joyce.
Then all that was fair, 'tis elven land, teams of times and happy returns, the same anew. Ordo vico or vi ricordo, Anna was, Livia is, Laura bells to be.
In the Sirens episode of Ulysses, episode 11, Bloom is wandering throughout town trying to buy time while Boylan and Molly are presumably copulating in his home. And throughout this episode, there are a number of musical themes, which it's just fascinating to look at the secondary literature on this stuff. I mean, it begins like a fugue. There are certain themes and variations that go on throughout here. But I want to highlight a particular spot where he is imagining the encounter between Boylan and Molly while he's in a bar. Tenors get women by the score, increase their flow, threw flower at his feet. When will we meet? My head it simply, jingle all delighted. He can't sing for tall hats. Your head it simply swirls. Perfumed for him. What perfume does your wife? I want to know. Jing, stop, knock. Last look at mirror, always before she answers the door. The hall. There? How do you? I do well. There? What? Or? Phial of caucus, kissing comforts in her satchel. Yes? Hands felt for the opulent. So all of this stuff is going on here. Basically, we have a stream of consciousness imagining of what it's like for Boylan to come to Molly, and she opens the door. The head it simply swirls. This is the lovely Seaside Girls theme, which constantly goes through Bloom's head throughout the day, and it reminds him of Boylan and Molly and their soon-to-come encounter. And throughout this, the tension is rising over and over, kissing comfits in her satchel, hands felt for the opulent. He's starting to feel her up. And he says, words? Music? No, it's what's behind. Bloom looped, unlooped, noted, disnoted. Bloom, flood of warm jam, lick it up secreteness, flowed to flow in music out, in desire, dark to lick, flowing, invading. Tipping her, tapping her, topping her, tup. Pores to dilate, dilating, tup. The joy, the feel, the warm, the tup. The pour o'er sluices, pouring gushes, flood, gush, flow, joy, gush, tup, thrub. Now, language of love. So we literally have this oozing case in which we have this tup, tup, tup. This is like the sound of a dropping. And this is the language of love, in which we can see it's just kind of coagulating together. His vocabulary is kind of truncated, and it just languidly flows from one syllable to the next. It soared a bird, it held its flight, a swift, pure cry, sore silver orb, it leaped serene, speeding, sustained to come. Don't spin it out too long, long breath, he breathed long life. High, high resplendent aflame, crowned high in the effulgence symbolistic, high of the ethereal bosom, high of the high vast irradiation, everywhere, all soaring around about the all, the endlessness. And this is the height, the real dominant moment in this symphony of love, where we're literally emulating a dominant seventh chord, waiting for that resolution to come. You can see there's not a lot of punctuation going on here. It's just continually flowing, 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 getting higher, higher, higher. The tension is building and building. And this is really one of the main devices that Joyce likes to use, is this extension of tension. And this goes to the nth degree in Finnegans Wake, where he'll have these huge run-on sentences where you have a subject and the subject expands to the point where it seems to encompass the entirety of the universe, and it's tremendously sonic the whole time. So it keeps its own rhythm. It just babbles in brooks like the sea. And throughout, we're trying to get some sense of rest, but that rest doesn't come. It continues to go on and on and on, like a symphony that doesn't quite know how to end, so it ends in endlessness. Now, you could look at any page in Finnegans Wake and you would see music being thematized in some manner. Sound, the way that we speak, listening, all of this is really important. And just to choose a random selection that I came upon, this is 2 pages. He says, after sound, light and heat, memory, will, and understanding. So sound comes first, and then after sound, we use that as the sort of bare refuse from which we gain understanding. We love, we see, we understand memory, right? We understand, for example, when we hear certain tunes that we haven't heard in a long time, we suddenly gain that memory back. And this is often used in music therapy, where certain songs will be played that will bring back the memory of people who we thought didn't have the capacity to maintain that memory any longer. He also has this very interesting word, sing-a-ling-a-lying, where singing and lying come together, because oftentimes the way in which we recognize a song can be taken advantage of as if it were a lie, as if it were tempting us and coaxing us inward, as Joyce often does, but then at the last moment gives us a lie, makes us betray our own thoughts. He says, where flash becomes word and silence self-loud. Right? So flash of light opens up, and what do we find? That the silence itself becomes loud from its inner self. This reminds me of the concept of inscape from Gerard Manley Hopkins, where he talks about every being selfs. That's what it does, is it does itself. It externalizes itself, and it speaks itself through sound. And hence, in Gerard Manley Hopkins' poetry, he tries to bring this out. And I think Joyce is doing something of the same thing, where there is a sonic kernel at the heart of being, the likes of which we saw in Wordsworth, which is this sort of cacophonous mess of both sublimity and baseness, profundity and confusion, and these all mix together in Finnegans Wake. I mean, if you've ever read a page of this, you'll see the cacophony that is this. He says, so mag this shibboleth be our shibboleth that we may syllable her well. Right? This is a perfect tongue twister case in which shibboleth and syllable in sibboleth, as in Sybil, which makes me think of Gerard Manley Hopkins' poem Spelt from Sybil's Leaves, which plays on the same sort of sounds. We have this case in which ALP, the female character, which represents resplendent beauty and multitude and mystification, She comes onto the scene with a syllable, where flash becomes word, and silence self-loud. And I would like to focus here for a moment on a continual theme that comes back. In fact, it's much less than a theme. It's a mere musical moment. And we can actually hear Joyce in one of the rare recordings we have of Finnegans Wake speaking this moment from the ALP chapter at the conclusion of chapter 1. And I'll play it for you here, and then I want to run through various iterations of it in Finnegans Wake so that we can see the way he plays with the theme and variations idea of language itself.
Ting tang, there's the bell for sextolitis, a concepta defendus praise.
One thing that you'll immediately notice is the articulation of Joyce's speech. He focuses on mixing musicality with everyday utterances, and I think we can really see that playing out in one of these rare instances where we see that same theme popping back up. Pink punks that bail for seeks a license where conceptors with centaurs stay. Right? We've got that same ping pong, bing bong thing going along. And that is always the way that this starts, with some sort of articulated bing bong, some sort of two-stroke articulation. And sometimes we just get that articulation. For example, peng pyong for sex and luti. There we just get that little announcement, but we don't get the entirety of the phrase. And here's yet again another instance. Ring, rang, the chimes of sex appearing as conchitus would send astray. Right, so we're getting this continual theme coming over and over and over. And it's almost unrecognizable if you weren't kind of looking for it. And I think that's something that Joyce challenges us to do, is to hold on to little bits that we understand and allow it to ramify throughout the book. I mean, these are happening hundreds of pages apart, and yet if you especially have heard Joyce speak that, and that's something that I want to stress here, then you really have that musical memory in you that allows you to see it coming back over and over again. And I think this focus on sound is something that we can see throughout the entirety of Joyce's life, and something that I want to focus on as a sort of interpretive structure to use when you come to Joyce. This is from Giacomo Joyce. At the very end he says, "In the vague mist of old sounds, a faint point of light appears. The speech of the soul is about to be heard. Youth has an end. The end is here. It will never be. You know that well. What then? Write it, damn you, write it. What else are you good for?" Right? So Joyce had this intensely musical consciousness that I think he really wanted to bring to the fore in his writing, and the only way he could do that was by going to the extremity of Finnegans Wake. And I think when you approach Joyce's work with that eye for musicality, you'll actually see him open up quite a bit. So I just wanted to use this as an opportunity, first to just share a bunch of Joyce that I really like, but also to showcase that continual theme that we see popping up in Finnegans Wake, and it might challenge you to approach his works with a musical ear about you. That being said, that's it for this lecture. Hopefully it's been of some use and kind of interesting. Check out any of my other lectures I've done on postmodernism, German idealism, gender theory, post-colonial studies, and other literature. You can also become a channel member for $5 a month and gain access to, among other things, a private philosophy Zoom, which you can tailor to your needs. I also have super thanks if you'd just like to donate to the channel, because books are not cheap, and I'd appreciate anything you have to give, but no pressure. That's it for this lecture, and I will see you in another one.